Here is an example of how Rothstein won a lot of money in one day out of the Big Bankroll by Leo Katcher, 1958. The location, the Aqueduct Horse Racing Stadium. The date, July 4th, 1921. This was the second big day of the horse racing season. The first was Memorial Day, and the third was Labor Day. On only those 3 days of the racing season were the tracks thronged. On only those days were the crowds so large that they had filled the clubhouse and overflowed the big betting shed in the grandstands. The crowd played an important part in helping Rothstein. The horse by means with Rothstein won $850,000 was named Sidereal, a 2-year-old colt by Starshoot out of Milky Way, which I believe those are the parents. Herbert Bay Swoop had picked the fortuitous and fitting name for the colt. Though it was owned by Rothstein, it was registered in the name of Max Hirsch, now an elder statesman of the turf, but then Rothstein's trainer. The Rothsteins, Mr. and Mrs. Rothstein, arrived at the track shortly after noon and went to the table that Rothstein always had reserved in the clubhouse restaurant. While Caroline Rothstein ate, Rothstein attended to business. The table resembled an ant hill, with a continual parade of people moving to and from it. These were a motley group, clockers and trainers, men who were settling the losses of yesterday or collecting their winnings. Stage stars and producers, big-time politicians, betting commissioners, toots and would-be borrowers. After a time, Rothstein left the table and went towards the stable area with Hirsch. They had to muscle their way through the thick crowds. The clubhouse bookmaking section was a solid mass of people, all trying to get down their bets. Under the grandstand, thousands were surrounding the bookmakers who had their stands there. Rothstein said,
"They're so busy, they don't have a chance to think. This would be a day to put a horse over. By the time they got wise, they'd be paying off."
He did not like the idea of losing so rare an opportunity. He was not certain that another would soon arise. Hopefully, he asked Hirsch.
"Do you know anything?"
Hirsch shook his head. Nothing. The only horse we were going to run today was Sidereal. I'm going to scratch him for a race on Friday. Rothstein's head jerked up.
"What shape is he in?"
He's sharp. Hirsch looked at his program. I think he could beat those other horses.
"Then run him."
Rothstein was eager, scenting the chances of a big winning. I didn't van him in. He's in the stable at Belmont. That was 3 miles away. Hirsch looked at his watch. I can get him here in time, though if you want to run him. Getting the horses there in time meant 20 minutes before the horses went to the post.
"We'll never get another chance like this. Get the horse here."
He walked away from Hirsch. Now Rothstein had to make his plans. His own employees and betting commissioners were known to every bookmaker. If any of these started making bets of any size, the bookmakers would immediately scent trouble. Not even the size of the crowd would prevent that. Rothstein's first step, therefore, was to ask a number of people if they would mind using their commissioners during the day. He made the request casually.
I don't figure on betting today, but I may change my mind. I gave Nat and the boys a day off.
Those whom he asked had no choice but to grant permission. You didn't refuse Arnold Rothstein a slight favor. You never knew when you might need a large one. Rothstein immediately hunted up the various commissioners. He told all of them he might be using them during the afternoon. He added,
If I do use you, don't tell anyone for whom you're betting. Bookmakers know I'm playing a horse. They'll shave the odds on a $5 bet.
The commissioners knew that this was true, and like their principals, they were only too eager to do a favor for Rothstein. There were 2 races to be run before that in which Sidereal was entered. At the track, betting was primarily from race to race. It would be some time before the prices went up on Sidereal's race. However, the overnight line had Sidereal at prices ranging from 25 to 1 to 40 to 1. He was the outsider, his form unknown in the figures. Rothstein now went looking for Hirsch to see how arrangements were going. He located him at a telephone, sweat running down his face. The trainer had been unable to get anyone at Belmont to answer the phone. It was a holiday and no one was in the track office. He told this to Rothstein quickly. Rothstein's lips thinned. He wasn't going to have his plans upset.
Come with me,
He said and hurried back to the table where Carolyn was sitting. Of course, if the horse couldn't be vanned to Aqueduct in time, Rothstein would lose nothing. But he was already counting his potential winnings, and these had attained a reality to him. In addition, there was his ego to satisfy. He had to make chumps of the bookmakers. Carolyn caught his signal, rose from the table, and joined Rothstein and Hirsch. That's Carolyn Rothstein.
Tell her what she has to do. Tom Farley's out in the car and he can run her over.
Hirsch grasped at this. He lived close to Belmont, and his wife was at home. Pick her up, he said, and go to the stables with her. Tell her to have the horse's plates changed, and then put him into a van and get him over here. Tell her and the foreman we don't have any time to waste. And I believe that was Hirsch that said that. This was literally true. One race had been run. The horses were being saddled for the next, and Sidereal was entered in the race after that. Hirsch, not having scratched the horse, Sidereal, was responsible for its being in the stable area in time to run. If the horse was not there, Hirsch could be fined and suspended. The van would be on its way soon. Carolyn looked at her watch. Time was going fast. Time was also going fast at the track. Rothstein had begun his betting campaign. He had given cash to some of the commissioners, told others to bet in the names of their regular employees. His orders were simple. Get as much as you can down, but make all your bets small. Use anyone you need to help you. The opening price on Sidereal was 30 to 1. At this price, a bookmaker might make a $10 bet in the clubhouse, a $50 bet in the grandstand. However, after taking the bet, the bookmakers would probably cut the price. It was up to the agents and their agents to protect the price as long as possible. Normally, if one bookmaker cut a price, others received a report quickly. And even though not carrying any bets, they would cut their price too. This day, however, most bookmakers were so busy they could hardly keep track of their own books, let alone keep watch on the competition. This was what Rothstein was banking on. He had 40 men placing bets for him, placing bets at the same time. The bets were relatively small, but they started adding up quickly. The odds dropped from 30 to 25, then to 20. Now, some bookmakers began to wonder what was going on. They dispatched men to seek Rothstein out and observe what he was doing. These spies returned to say Rothstein was sitting in a box with friends and apparently totally unconcerned with the wagering. Since none of the bets had been placed by men who worked for Rothstein, it was plausible he had nothing to do with the wagering. The racetrack was filled with many amateur gamblers on this holiday, and most of these were long shot players. That was why holidays were red letter days to bookmakers. These were the days when they could got the sucker play. Nonetheless, the price on Sidereal dropped steadily as the bookmakers sought to keep their ledgers in balance. Meanwhile, Hirsch was waiting at the gate. He had virtually no leeway left. It was 5 minutes to saddling time, 5 minutes until the horse had to be in the saddling area, or Sidereal would automatically be scratched. Jimmy McLaughlin, the paddy judge, began to verify the presence of the horses. He saw Sidereal's stall was empty. Hunting for Hirsch, he found him at the gates. "Where's your horse, Max?" "On the way," was all Hirsch could say. He was staring down the dirt road. He wondered if that was a dust cloud he saw. McLaughlin looked at his watch. 2 minutes, Max." "I know." Hirsch kept peering and was sure that it was a dust cloud. Then it was 1 minute. McLaughlin said, "I'll have to notify the stewards, Max. Sorry." He started to turn, but as he did so, the dust cloud lifted. A van was rolling up to the gate. It came to a stop. It wasn't enough that the horse was on the track. It had to be in the paddock. Hirsch ran and opened the tailgate. The ramp went up. Hirsch jumped into the van, led the horse down, brought him into the paddock. McLaughlin looked at his watch. "You sure drew it fine, Max. You beat the gun by 6 seconds." Hirsch had no time for McLaughlin. He was rubbing the horse down, quieting him. Grooms and stable boys went to work on Sidereal. The jockey who had been standing about joined them. Carolyn Rothstein drove up while this was going on. She got out of the car. "Were we in time?" "Yes," Hirsch said. Carolyn went back to the clubhouse. Walking through it, she saw Arnold Rothstein, her husband. Casually, she stepped into the box. Rothstein gave her a quick look. Her nod was almost imperceptible. So was Rothstein's smile. The saddling bell sounded, then the bugle for the parade to the post. The horses came out slowly, led by the outrider. Rothstein got word to the commissioners.
"Take any price."
Now the money was poured in. The price kept dropping and dropping to 15 to 1, to 12, to 10, to 8, to 5, to 4. There is a contagion, a hysteria at the racetrack. Word spreads without a word being spoken. 5 people, 50, 500, 5,000 suddenly became aware of the same thing at the same moment. That happened at Aqueduct. It seemed as though everyone at the track simultaneously decided to bet on Sidereal. Professional bettors, casual visitors, and totes. The innocents and the smart money, all of them wanted to get in on this. It was the same at every book, clubhouse, or grandstand. Price meant nothing. The books did the only thing they could. They marked out, opposite the name Sidereal, boosted the odds on every other horse in the race, hoping somehow to balance their sheets. The horses were nearing the post. Marshall Cassidy, the starter, and his assistants were at the barrier. And still, Rothstein sat in the clubhouse box, chatting and smiling. But the bookmakers were no longer fooled. They knew that they had been hoodwinked, outsmarted, and there wasn't anything they could do about it. There was no place, no one to which they could turn and try to lay off the bets they had taken. The man who had made those bets was the only place open for laying them off. Some did try, however, and surprisingly, Rothstein was willing to take back some of the bets, but at closing odds. That meant that the last price that had been posted against Sidereal, 8-5, he accepted bets amounting to $125,000 at these odds. Why? Because it meant that no matter what happened in the race, he had to be a winner. He was playing with the bookmakers' money. If Sidereal won, even after paying out $200,000, he would still be $850,000 ahead. If Sidereal lost, he would be about $40,000 winner. Not bad for an afternoon.